want to start today with a nod to my friends at Lumpkin County High School who visited CNN Center yesterday. It's great to see all of you. Welcome to CNN Student News. First up this Thursday, December 4th, the Syrian town of Kobani. You've heard us mention it before. It's right by Syria's northern border with Turkey. It's been targeted for months by the ISIS terrorist group, which controls about a third of Iraq and Syria. But ISIS hasn't been able to take total control of Kobani. It's been hit by U.S.-led airstrikes. American and Syrian officials disagree about whether these airstrikes have been effective in stopping ISIS. But the terrorists have also gotten strong resistance in Kobani by Kurds and other ethnic groups. All this has taken its toll on the border town. Some areas are just heaps of rubble. Previously, we could only show you fighting there from our journalists who were across the border in Turkey. Now, with the help of some of those who are fighting ISIS, we're able to show you what it's like inside Kobani.
We've been taken down this street towards the eastern front line behind those curtains they've put up to protect them from snipers by Barfi and Media, who were two of the female YPG fighters escorting us down there. And this is nearer the eastern front where there's been much more intense fighting in the past 3 or 4 days. And while we get differing figures from whoever you speak to here about quite how much of the city is controlled, and you see here quite remarkable devastation caused by the explosives used, what's quite clear is that ISIS are far from giving up on this fight. In fact, trying to take ground every day. Their move towards the official border crossing 3 or 4 days ago, that was a substantial advance they tried. They were beaten back, but each night, particularly last night, we heard very intense clashes further down this street towards the eastern front here. You can see the absolute devastation here as we get closer towards ISIS's positions here to the northeast of the city. Some of this caused by airstrikes, but some too from the daily constant, sometimes every 5 minutes, thump of mortars, some homemade by ISIS, that have been pounding into Kobani for months now. We can see Turkey literally just behind us, but here they're edging through this wreckage closer and closer to the places where ISIS are trying to push forwards.
Time for the shout out. Which of these constellations was named for a mythological hunter? If you think you know it, shout it out. Is it Aries, Orion, Pegasus, or Leo? You've got 3 seconds. Go. One of the easiest constellations to find on winter nights, Orion, is named for the Greek mythological hunter. That's your answer, and that's your shout out.
It's also the name of NASA's newest space capsule, which is scheduled for a test flight today. This Orion cost $370 million. It's prepared to launch from Florida's Kennedy Space Center. The stakes are high, even though Orion isn't carrying any astronauts. If this test flight fails, it could ground NASA's long-term goals of transporting people well beyond the moon.
We could soon be one small step closer to humans landing on Mars. This is Orion, NASA's first deep space capsule since the 70s.
Why is this the time to do this?
It's a great time because we have a design, and it's time to actually put the design into practice.
Mark Geyer, Orion's program manager, says Thursday's launch will test critical technologies like the heat shield and re-entry system. Orion may look a lot like the Apollo capsule of old, but it's hoped this vessel will go beyond the moon, taking astronauts to an asteroid and eventually to Mars. And as in the past, private companies are playing a big role. United Launch Alliance is providing the rocket. Lockheed Martin designed the spacecraft.
So we're trying to bring the best of all the worlds together.
Are there any concerns about not having full control over the mission?
Well, we are, no, again, because we put the right people in the right place. And we have liftoff.
The Orion launch comes on the heels of 2 space flights that went horribly wrong. On October 28th, an orbital sciences rocket headed to the International Space Station burst into flames moments after liftoff. 3 days later, the Virgin Galactic Spaceship Two exploded during a test flight, killing one of the pilots.
You know, it just brings to forefront again that it's a risky business, and everybody is doing their best to minimize that risk.
No one will be on board the Orion while it spends 4.5 hours traveling some 3,600 miles. It's expected to orbit the Earth twice, going through the Van Allen belts, an area of extreme radiation. If all goes well, Orion will parachute into the Pacific Ocean, where it will be recovered and loaded onto a Navy ship.
The 7th state to achieve statehood achieved statehood in 1788. It's Maryland, and Hagerstown, Maryland is on today's roll, where the Hubs are watching at North Hagerstown High School. Just east in New Jersey, the city of Trenton is where you'll find Grace A. Dunn Middle School. The Chargers are here. And over on the west coast to Snohomish County Detention Center, thank you for watching in Everett, Washington. We know many of you really like our puns and some of you really don't. But in China, they would be illegal. It's a communist country. Its citizens don't have the same freedoms of speech and press that Americans have. The government controls the media. And it says that puns could be misleading to young people and make it harder to promote traditional Chinese culture. The ban will have an impact, at least in the short term. The Chinese language has a lot of homophones, words that sound the same but have different meanings. So it's ripe for puns. Critics are calling the ban Orwellian in reference to the George Orwell book 1984, saying the ban's another way to keep people from criticizing the government. Eric Weihenmayer lost his vision at age 13. Didn't stop him from learning to skydive solo. Didn't stop him from climbing Mount Everest. He says learning to paddle through whitewater rapids was the scariest thing he'd ever done. With a guide and a separate kayak behind him, Weihenmayer took on the Colorado River.
My name is Eric Weihenmayer, and this is what it's like to kayak the Grand Canyon blind. Grand Canyon is a real iconic, beautiful place in the world. And even though I can't see it, I can still experience it, you know, with my hands touching the rocks and experiencing the sound of the canyons, the way they echo. Amazing rapids that you're right in the middle of, feeling them under your boat, just throwing you in every direction, sometimes smashing through them. You get plunged into absolute chaos, and you have to react in a very short amount of time. You're trying to process so much information, you know, I mean, you're trying to read the river just by the sounds you're hearing and what you're feeling under your boat, you know, and a rapid has a pattern that you can kind of figure out. You're trying to listen to the waves and the pour-overs, that you can start to identify that as a blind kayaker. I thought, you know, it would be really intriguing to see if a blind person could sort of flourish in all that chaos. It sort of feels like you're an astronaut going into space, you know, launching to the moon or something.
Four different colors, 3,000 people to win the title of one Guinness World Record. It's the biggest human Christmas tree. You see it shaping up here as it did on December 2nd in the Central American country of Honduras. This has been attempted before in Thailand and Argentina, but Honduras won the record by more than 1,000 participants. The country's president called the official record officially amazing. Too bad Brenda Lee isn't here to see folks record a record rocking round the Christmas tree. When the plan was planted, the trim trimmed, the form formed. The tree was guaranteed to succeed in record form. I'm jolly old Carl Azus for CNN Student News.